Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning into the Magic Land channel. We've got a fantastic guest for you today. Knowlton Walsh will be sitting with us and we're going to be talking to him about his DJ process and production process. And he's going to be throwing down a fantastic DJ set later on too as well. So please make sure to subscribe to our channel for all the great fixings of Magic Land Entertainment. Hey Knowlton, man, thank you so much for coming up on our show today.
Thanks for having me.
Can't wait to hear what you got going on. Hopefully you're going to be playing some original music in your set, so it'll be really nice. Putting out a lot of new music, actually. Your last EP, which was called Crash Override.
Yes.
Like, I don't put a lot of expectations on any kind of music or anything like that. You know, I just go into it and I hear it, and whatever resonates with me, it is what it is in that sense. And your stuff really resonated with me in that sense. It's like, that is the kind of techno that I really go out and look for to play.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about sort of the process of how you kind of got that EP together.
Kind of a funny story. The track Crash Override, I wrote that. That's something that I've kind of been sitting on for a couple years. Was kind of just joking about the different process between both of the tracks on the EP because they kind of varied drastically between. Joking about like how sometimes you get something done really quick. I just fly through the process, and the Crash Override track, that was done in 2 days. The other track, Philosophy of Time Travel, that was 2.5 months.
Yeah.
So it's just, and it's sometimes I laugh about how, you know, sometimes things just you fly right through it, and sometimes, but then again, I also, you know, one of those it took me 2.5 months to do, and then that came out right away. And the other one I sat on that was done in 2 days, sat on it for 3 years, and then it was released. So,
inspiration comes and goes in waves that it's just so difficult to ever like get something really consistent on some sort of plane. I always,
Sure.
I'm always blown away by some producers who literally can just sit down at a desk and just bust out a song in a day or two consistently in this way. I don't know if that is diminishing the artistic content in some sort of way, because it seems very machinery in some type of way, almost like a manufacturing plant. It's just cranking things out. So you're doing this way in a very systematic way, and you're not really having a lot of emotion behind it, which I feel like a lot of music, you know, you tend to want to have that kind of impact into it. You want to have a little of your personality into it. I mean, do you generally kind of go about that when you write a song in such quick successions? Is that something that's just like, man, it's immediate, it's flowing through me?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that there's, I think about because there are people that just boom, 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 and I've had other producers talk to me about it too, that sometimes say, oh, maybe you're kind of overthinking things, and that, you know, instead of, you know, just look at it like a puzzle, like what fits, what doesn't fit, and then put it together that way. But sometimes I don't know. I think there's more emotion involved, and there's more. That might fit, but it's not the direction that I want to go in with I have in my mind a direction that I want to go in with the piece of music that I'm working on. So, though there are people that are, you know, I think more of an anomaly that can produce track after track after track. It's really, really good, but I think it takes a long time before you hit a certain stride like that. You know, somebody I used to work with a while back, Mike Hoska, used to tell me, he's like, yeah, you need to start putting something out every single week as well, and eventually you're gonna, you know.
Holy crap!
I'm like, well, it's funny because he stepped back now. He talks to me and he's come. What are you working on now? I'm trying to get back into working on things, and I think, you know, it's just when you have, you know, when your full-time job isn't, you know, doing, you know, working on dance music all the time, that, you know, pulls you back, and then you get times that you can, you know, relax and come back to working on stuff, and life gets in the way, whether people getting married, having kids, relationships, and all kinds of things like that, you know, pull you away and also keep you inspired to do the work that you want to do with music.
Right, yeah. And I mean, and how did you get to that point to writing music in the way that you do? Tell us a little bit about sort of your history with it.
I've been a musician since I was a kid. I taught myself how to play piano when I was like 7, and then I was in band in high school, playing clarinet and drums, and started playing in like hardcore bands in Florida, playing drums, and then it kind of got into the point when I was in college, and there was just no time to be in a band, so I kind of had friends who were DJing, and I started getting into electronic music. It was around like '98, and then started learning how to DJ, and that was I didn't need anybody else to be around me.
Yeah.
I just could do that on my own all the time. So started going more into the DJing, but I wanted to have the creative outlet. So a couple years later, when I moved back up to New England, I actually, funny to speak about it, started working with Mike Hoska back at the time, and he's the one that kind of, I knew a bit more about the theory side of music. He knew more about the technology side, and we kind of worked together and just swapped a lot of information.
Yeah.
And from there, just kind of started working on my own, and a lot of learning as you go, taking classes, and a lot of time dedicated on my own to learn my own programs, and just to streamroll a workflow.
Yeah. And I mean, in part, it's like with that kind of workflow, and then the music that you are currently making. I mean, how's that genesis happen? How did that kind of?
Okay, I see what you mean.
You know what I mean? It's more so of your inspiration, because you grew up in Orlando, Florida, for a huge portion of your life, right?
Yeah, I went to.
Or was it? It was down over.
I kind of went back and forth. I was
Yeah.
down there when I was young, like kindergarten and first grade. Came back to Rhode Island, then moved back down there when I was right before 8th grade. Stayed in Orlando and then up to Tallahassee until I finished college, and moved back up to Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So I kind of bounced back and forth a little bit, but I have a lot of connection to Rhode Island, a lot of connection to Florida as well.
And during that time, I mean, I can assume that, especially growing up in the 80s and the early 90s, you were really into the sort of the Miami bass kind of house music scene that was happening down there.
Well, it's
And that kind of that kind of influenced a lot of what you were doing, or like the music that you were consuming to further along your inspirations for DJing and making music.
it's kind of yes and no. I had there's a lot of in Orlando back in that time. There's a lot of, I mean, the Miami bass turned into Florida breakbeats, and that was
Yeah.
a big sound back then. And it was actually I got more into electronic music because back in the mid '90s I was a really big fan of Oasis. I was really into Britpop in the time, and I was in a band with this guy Sam. I think it was like '95, '96, and he's like, "Oh, I know you love Oasis. You got to hear this song. They did this song. Noel Gallagher did the song with these guys, the Chemical Brothers." So he played "Setting Sun" for me, and that was like, whoa,
Yeah.
what the heck is this? And then like that was right, that was the Chemical Brothers, and Prodigy was coming out right after that. Fat of the Land came out, so really kind of connecting with that big explosion of electronic music, which at the same time, like in Orlando, you had in Florida, you had a lot of. It was it was a pocket of the United States where these guys that were DJing down there were so big down there, but a lot of them didn't really travel outside of the Southeast United States, like Sandy, Jimmy Jocelyn, Genesis, guys like that. But I mean, Icy and Baby Ann, they definitely they came up
yeah.
from New England and stuff like that. But there were so many guys down there that had a huge following, but it was just so specific to the southeastern portion of the United States. But I was getting more into more like, I think, trance and stuff at the time. The Gatecrasher mix CDs were really big back then.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely. I do very much remember a lot of that, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Exactly.
Big exposure with like Paul Oakenfold and Sasha and John Digweed were really very much the ones who were kind of pioneering a lot of that along the way. So, and then with like labels like Planet Perfecto, Bedrock, and Moonshine was another one that there were sort of very big labels that had the talent but also the funding to go on tour.
Yeah.
And they really were the ones spreading that word out there. Did you ever have any encounters with any of those artists? Did you ever experience any of the people from those labels?
I've had well, I'm just trying to think like within more in social interactions than anything
Oh,
else.
you never went to any of their shows? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. Yes, I was trying to figure out exactly what capacity. I definitely went to. I can remember like not being allowed. I think I was like 19 or something like that, and I had a ticket to go see. And I had seen Sasha and Digweed before, and they were playing at Universal Studios in Orlando. My mom was like, I don't know why, she just really didn't want me to go anywhere, and it was like I had to sneak out. I was like, I can't believe I'm an adult now and I'm sneaking out of the house to go see.
Wait, so you were like 19, 20 years old?
Yeah, my mother was she was the authority person in the family, and she she wanted to keep a tight. I was the baby. She kind of liked to keep a tight grip on me. My brother, he could do whatever the heck he wanted.
That's so funny because it's like, I'm the youngest of 3 older brothers, and I pretty much had carte blanche to do whatever the fuck I want. And my oldest brother was like the one, my family were like real sticklers about that shit. So, it's kind of a little bit of the opposite. It's kind of funny that I see that.
We were a messed up family, but whatever. That's a different discussion.
Hey, that's all good, man. Hey, but you know what? The funny thing is that kind of stuff really influences a lot of like who you are as an artist in that sense.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like I can, from my own history, music has always been a part of my family. We never were really formally trained people. When I was like in elementary school, maybe playing like the clarinet, that kind of thing. And I did some choir stuff, but music was always a big part in our house. We were always playing something. So I assume that's the same thing with you, is that, in your house, you were, whoever was the benefactor of that was the one to help you really influence what you were listening to in some part too, as well.
Oh,
was it that
definitely.
your mom? Was your mom very much into?
I mean, I'd say equal parts. My mom and my dad. I can remember. I have back when I was a kid in Rhode Island playing. I played hockey. I was probably the worst hockey player in our league. I scored a goal for the other team in the playoffs. But I can remember like going to hockey games and my dad listening to a lot of like Creedence and Rolling Stones and stuff like that. But at the same time, growing up with my mom was really into like 70s and 80s R&B and like funk and stuff like that. So, and it's one of those things that I think about it now. I'm like, oh, Mom, I don't want to listen to that and hear her alarm going off in the morning that was 1,000 decibels louder than anything else. She would still sleep through it. I've got to wake up, David Sanborn, Ashford and Simpson and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, Mom, your music sucks. But now, like, as an adult, you realize how much of an influence that was on you. And like, going into, DJing and music that I play with house and techno and seeing how much of that old R&B is influenced, what selections I have when I, when I'm picking music out to play.
That goes right into production. I mean, that really does. All those little sounds are somehow kind of are in your subconscious.
I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting there working on something and I've got like working on a track and I'm like, wait, did somebody else do this already? And I feel like, did I hear this somewhere else? And I think I'm making, but then, you
I had the same thing, yeah.
Once in a while, like maybe you're inspired by somebody else, but it's not like, the same exact. So and there are certain tracks of mine that I can listen to, and I'll be like, "Yep, I know what I was listening to when I thought of that." But it's, nobody else would probably really make the connection except for me.
When you're sitting in front of your computer and you're trying to come up with a song, you obviously are a trained musician, so you can run through certain routines, right? In order for you to get to a certain point where you can actually start writing like a melody or a bass line, however your process is. Tell us a little bit about that. Curious.
Most of the time, I actually I come up with a lot of stuff while I'm working because I spend a lot of time driving in my car, and the voice record on an iPhone has come into play so many times where like something pops into my head and I'll like sing it in the voice record, and actually, the track Philosophy of Time Travel was like a combination of like 3 different voice recordings that I made, and I was like, oh, yeah, this and this and these, all these will kind of work together. But a lot of times I start off with the bass line. That's normally what I start with, and then working with what's I think is truly difficult is that I don't think there's any melody or bass line or anything like that's truly original that hasn't been done before. I mean, The old joke is God gave you 12 notes and said, here, do what you want with this. And so there's so many combinations, but so that's why I think most writers and arrangers will come into that point where you're thinking, is this? Oh no, I'll get over it and just keep going and don't question yourself. And I think that's the best approach. And unfortunately, I have to keep reminding myself.
Yeah, yeah, you really can't. I mean, it's honestly, it's like because you never get anything done.
Oh yeah.
If you
Second
really
guess
could,
yourself all the time.
Yeah. It's such a fine line when you're thinking about it. There's millions of music compositions done on a yearly basis. You can't think about the fact of listen to all of it and make sure you're not repeating other people's ideas in some sense.
It's better off to let other people worry about it. Just do it. And I think that was.
We'll let the algorithms deal with that.
Well, even I remember, I don't really sample. I used to sample stuff, and I just ran into problems with it where.
Oh yeah.
You write a great piece of music, but the sample you used, you cannot clear it, and the licensing is just absolutely ridiculous. And now I'm stuck with something. I'm like, that's great, but I can't make any money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember people telling me, they're like, oh, just release it anyways, and then don't worry about going through a legal battle. I'm like, no,
that's
I'm
so dangerous.
Worried about going through a legal battle because I don't really have the money to go through a legal battle, and this person who would be, that person, but Universal takes me to court over a licensing problem. That's a big issue. I'm not going to be able to afford it.
Yeah, they're going to win automatically.
Yeah.
It's not even a question. You have a company, a multi-million-dollar entity that is just spread out through the entire planet, and then there's me. You can't. I mean, it's very, very difficult. I mean, not too long ago, the ruling of blurred lines, when that case happened, I think there was a big push amongst the music in the music industry for that kind of sample clearance and that level, because the family of Marvin Gaye won the lawsuit over the label, which is it set a big precedent.
I know that kind of scared me when that happened, because I think you look at every single form of art, it borrows from art that was made previously. Like you watch a movie, you see certain directors, like you watch anything made by Quentin Tarantino, it's pretty much every movie's like a nod to Martin Scorsese. It happens in film all the time. It's one thing to sample, but the whole case with that, where it was more like it was inspired by, it kind of laid the groundwork for the sound for that track. I'm like, all right, now if you're siding on that, that's like, so what, you can't make something that sounds like something else anymore? So I haven't read up about it a whole lot. I think one of the most interesting things as well that I heard was that it wasn't Marvin Gaye's estate that was, like, for some reason I think I heard Robin Thicke, that he was suing Marvin. I heard it wasn't like Marvin Gaye's estate going after Robin Thicke.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how that happened.
It was a very interesting event that happened with that. It really was. You can go as far back to even towards like the 90s with the Verve with Bittersweet Symphony. There is a very contentious debate whether or not that they really infringe on the Rolling Stones' song, because the Rolling Stones actually took that same violin sequence from something that was older, from another piece of music, and the Bittersweet Symphony guys, the Verve, said they took it from that, not from the Rolling Stones.
Well, there's a lot of stuff like that all of a sudden, once this freaking snowball turned into an avalanche with sampling, where all these blues and early rock and roll acts, mostly unheard of, who all got sampled in the 70s by Led Zeppelin, a lot of other now classic rock bands. I just saw a movie on it the other day that was like, I didn't realize how many, they're just finally saying, oh, we finally, we've lived in poverty for so long, and unfortunately, like a lot of other forms, more in the art world, that people, make nothing for so long, and then as soon as they die, they make millions and millions and millions of dollars, which hopefully for their families, it's
Yeah.
advantageous for them to see that they finally get appreciated and get something for their hard work.
Yeah, exactly. What was the documentary?
Oh, it wasn't actually. No, that wasn't a documentary. That was Cadillac Records. Story. It's a story of Chuck Berry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
With, Mos Def, I think was. But yeah, it was at the very end. They started naming all the different blues and rock and roll acts, and I was like, wow. And then who sampled who, and who got caught and had to pay over a bunch of money.
And kind of going back a little bit to music production and the music that you released. Do you remember who was the first label that put your music out?
That was Nosy Music. A friend of mine, Gil Cruneri, who he's from New England, moved down to New York and started it was interesting. It was a music label, but they also sold modular Danish furniture. Really high. It was
okay.
We did a showcase at a club in Providence, and he brought all this furniture that we were taking pictures of furniture. We were DJing. It was a interesting combination of industries, but I think they ended up doing a lot more with the furniture than they did with the record label. But he released a couple tracks of mine.
What were the names of the tracks?
The first one I ever, that was it was at 1.21 gigawatts. That's what I named it.
Man, you got a lot of good movie reference stuff in it.
A lot of there's a lot of I do use a lot of movie references.
No, that's perfect because I'm a film geek, so I love it.
He did on the other track. It was a track I did called Animal, and that was one that I sampled. And I tried to do some research to find a sample that was obscure enough. I'm like, all right, who owns this? It was a song by Bonnie Pointer from the Pointer. She just passed away,
Pointer Sisters, right? Yeah.
She did a song that was on this Canadian. It was like the Canadian version of Dirty Dancing. That was like a B movie in the '80s, and it was a song called The Beast in Me. And I was like, oh, let me see what I can do something with play around with it. Just took a portion of the chorus, chopped it up a bit, and then released that. And that ended up getting on the Music Choice Network, and did really, really well on the Music Choice Network. And it was, we couldn't do anything with it because I couldn't get any licensing. The unfortunate part about that is at the time I was working at the Capitol Grill in Providence, and her sister Ruth used to be married to a guy in Providence and would come into dinner for dinner all the time. And I knew the regular waiters, and I was always trying to could you please just talk to them? I can't just go up and start talking to the table, but this is a very, I'm trying to get these right so I can make some money, everybody can make some money, and nobody really there that I worked with understood that other capacity that I worked in as far as working in music, so they just kind of laughed about it, and a bunch of wasted opportunities, unfortunately. Thinking back on it, I'm like, you know what? It would have been worth getting written up just to try to just break the ice on that one. But yeah, hindsight's 2020. That's why I'm going back to it now. I just I don't want to sample anything anymore.
Yeah, no, it's totally not worth it at this point. And in terms of you're not someone who has any money to be able to pay for the licensing on those things, because it is very expensive. Because nowadays you can't use anything, no timing, Before there was I think it was 3 seconds or it was more of a musical timing signature, you can only use 1 bar or something. Now it's 0. So
I remember hearing from a friend of mine who worked in the X-Mix office back when Duck Sauce released Anyway, and hearing they paid $80,000 for the licensing for that, and I'm like, I don't even really know what song that was from, but it wasn't a very.
That's $80,000.
Just to use the sample.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
They definitely made their money back on it, but that's just.
And that's the thing. It's a roll of the dice. Because you never know exactly how well that is going to do, because it's a very risky investment. And also it's a lot of that can extend into your DJing too as well, because you're producing and then you take those tracks on the road, just like any other kind of musical act. And you've done a lot. You've played a ton of shows, man. I mean, you were doing stuff. You're doing a lot of stuff down in Florida. You also were doing a ton of stuff in Providence. You were doing the hot pink parties.
Yeah, we definitely had fun. It was you know, I don't know if I guess kind of claiming ignorance at a lot of things. Like, oh, can we get away with that? I don't know. I don't know if it's legal or not. Let's just go for it. If we get caught, we get caught. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's during that time in Providence where it was like you could get away with a lot of stuff because it was still being run by the mob.
Well, there's yeah, and I learned. I worked with before Chris Harris, who he threw like all the big gay events in Providence and Boston too.
Yeah.
Had, Epic Sundays at
yes, at Avalon.
At Avalon, and he taught me a lot about because I was in Florida. It was doing promotion. You always had some a little bit of skin to get people to come in when you had drink specials and things like that, which you can't really work with that because of blue laws up here. But he was teaching me things like that at the time. He was like, oh yeah, if you create the flyer and word it like you're inviting somebody to a cocktail reception with complimentary drinks, somehow that was like a gray area. So that's how we started writing up these flyers and these invitations. Oh, and come up to the DJ booth for a complimentary shot of Rumpelmans or something like that.
That's freaking great. Hey, whatever gets people through the door, man. Like honestly, you gotta make things fun, inventive. That's kind of like the difference between certain scenes from what I can understand. Mm-hmm. I've never partied down in Florida before, but I've been to tons of different events in New York, and between here and from Boston to New York, and there is a difference. Like some people there's similarities because obviously we're here in the Northeast, but I can't imagine what it might have been down south. Like, I mean, for example, like I saw one of your flyers for the Crush party,
yeah.
And it says The Animal. And I'm like, no, well, The Animal. And I'm like, what is going on here, man?
That guy, Paul, that ran that party, Paul, I don't know, he does something really, really crazy with marketing in New York now. But he, that was right after my track Animal came out, so that's what he was kind of playing off that. But that was, going back to the free drink thing, that was because the night Hot Pink in Providence was a sister night of a night Hot Pink in New York, and they did from down there even, they were doing it was like all you can drink Svedka vodka until it runs out. Every night I went, they never had it. It was like I get there at 9:30. I'm like, they're not even open yet, and you're out of it. How does that happen?
Jesus Christ, man.
Just realized, I'm like, oh, I really think they were just getting people to come in the door. But we were trying to work with them. Like, well, what can we do that's like that? But I mean, Florida was the same thing as well. Like playing those parties, there was a keg of Stella on stage right next to the DJ booth while you're playing the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
Alcohol was dirt cheap unless you go to Miami. That's a little different. You're spending $60 a drink and stuff like that. But
I can imagine.
Other parts of Florida where it's not so glamorous, they do everything they can to get people in the door.
And that's the thing. It's like, here in the States, we have a very interesting, I think, from my own experience and then listening to other people's experiences, we have a really interesting way of going about dance music and clubbing here. Mm-hmm. But when you go to Europe, and you've had a very extensive, you travel quite a bit, man, and you really had a good run over out in Europe, checking out clubs and events out there. What's the contrast like that, man? Because I haven't experienced it.
The way that you talk to like 90s promoters and DJs and about the differences between the scene in the United States and Europe, and Americans will always say we invented house and techno music, and then the British like to say, well, we're the ones that made it big. And it's, I mean, you listen to like I think I was listening to like Frankie Bones talking about in a documentary how about, I was used to playing parties here, and I go over there and all of a sudden I'm playing in front of 15,000 people, and I never had an experience like that in the United States.
Yeah.
And that's, I think a big part of that comes from the backlash to disco in the 70s that you never had that in Europe. So that's why you started getting a lot of electronic bands in the 80s that got really big over there, that still got big over here, but not the way that metal and rock got really big in the United States. So which made house and techno had to be very, very underground, but over over there, you had, and it's funny listening. You see some old like Detroit techno documentaries and listening to like Juan Atkins saying, I can't believe there's like 1,000 white kids dancing to this music that we've only seen black people go out and
That's
listen
really
to.
interesting, yeah, because that is very much it's a different culture of ideas in that sense of how people have consumed the music in Europe and then over here, and I think one of the things is that yes, there was a lot of black culture pretty much invented dance music, and but because of rap music kind of took that over of
it's more like the more mainstream type of urban
music, yeah.
as opposed to, which it's also hearing that comparison that house and techno being the more alternative urban music as opposed to hip hop being the more mainstream, what you're going to hear the predominant majority of the time. But I know it's interesting because even in England they have roots going back to 70s and 80s with the whole Northern Soul, which was really based off of B-sides of Motown music, which was again a very, very white culture getting into a very, very American black sound. So I mean, those kind of opening the doors for how big things got over there, and going over. I remember going to Ibiza in the mid 2000s and checking that out for a couple weeks, and trying to work with what I could when I was there and seeing the differences. Well, something they don't teach you over here is that Spanish people in Ibiza hate English people. So you're seeing like in the kids that are going over there, a lot of them are pretty young, between like 17 and 20, and they're like American college kids going on spring break, and that's how they.
That's a great example. Yeah.
They and they don't speak a word of the language, and they're in another language calling the people that live there, or in another country calling the people that live there foreigners, not able to speak the language. If you had something written in English on your shirt, people automatically, I mean, they assumed you're from England, you're not from the United States. Once they found out that you're from the United States, they'd give you a little bit more of a break, but. There was definitely a big friction between the two cultures there, which, that's something you had to learn firsthand. Going over there at the time, you were getting music there firsthand that wasn't, in the United States yet, which was, cool being able to bring stuff back with me. I'm like, oh, we don't have these records here yet. I'm so excited to go out and play them. But the flip side of that is, like, I think it was at Pacha. I don't know if they still have it. They had a room called the Global Room, and the Global Room was where they would bring in big hip hop DJs. One night they had Stretch Armstrong playing when I was there. Next week they had Africa Bambaataa playing. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool, but I mean, it's not what I came here to see. But it's kind of awesome just to check out everything that they had to offer.
That's really neat, man.
But go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry, guy. This is like a really great history on that, because I've never experienced very much of that. I've seen countless of documentaries, especially about Ibiza, and like how. I mean, that really influenced a lot of people and DJs and everything like that. And I assume it definitely influenced you quite a bit.
Yeah, it definitely, it's funny, but for some reason, I don't know why my father got it stuck in his head that I went over there, that I had a horrible time. And he's like, he always talks to me. He's like, you don't want to go back, do you? I'm like, yeah, I would love to go back. What makes you think that I was there for 3 weeks? If I had a bad time, I would have just come back.
Yeah.
But it was, it was great to experience. It wasn't I was hoping to get a job when I was there. That didn't pan out. So not having a lot of money. We were just kind of trying to scrape by and still manage to have fun, because. It's it does cost big bucks to go out when you're over there.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. It's the just the air travel, but also the staying there and eating and partying like all at the same time. It's not something that's sustainable.
It just came down to like, all right, I just need money to food, have a couple drinks, and try to get in. And you can't go to a club every single night. I can't do that here in the United States.
Yeah.
You try that at I do that at Winter Music Conference. By the third day, I can't talk, I can't hear anything. So you gotta know where all right, you can only spend this much time. I gotta
Yeah, you got to
Pace
decompress. Yeah, that's why a lot of people like whoever when I've heard they go to Ibiza, they're like, they party all through into the morning, and then they go to the beach and sleep on the beach, and then go and party for the next couple of days. But that shit gets a little exhausting, man.
Yeah, you gotta. I mean,
Gotta
the
pace
human
yourself,
body is
for
not
sure.
designed to just go and go and go. You have to get rest. You have to drink water. You have to eat food. You have to take a shower.
Yeah.
These are all important things that people need to remember. And you can pinpoint people. I'm like, all right, you haven't been following the guidelines.
Yeah, right.
Go
And
take a nap and drink some water.
and they're all falling apart over there and things like that. So after that, you come back stateside, and you're still doing all these different events. At some point, when you're here stateside, you got involved with Volume Productions, and you were playing Tuesday nights at the Living Room, and
Yeah, that was actually right around the same, within like 2 or 3 months that I had already been, when I first moved to Rhode Island, back up to Rhode Island, I had to ship all my records up, and my records were showing up in batches, like 2-3 days, big box of records come by. Then upstairs neighbor comes downstairs, he knocks on the door, and he's like, hey, those records you haven't shipped to your house? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh yeah, I'm a drum and bass DJ. My roommate makes psytrance. I was like, oh, okay. And then he's like, oh, I want to introduce you. It was Chris Barlow from
oh, no way.
Terra Vita and Hopping DeLorean. He just happened to live upstairs to the place that I moved into.
Wow, what a coinky dink.
So that started. He brought me out and introduced me to Jeff LeClaire. Jeff was doing Plastic for Volume on Thursday nights back then, which was that was a fun venue. That was like
I've been to that night. I remember that.
3 to 4 different rooms depending on weather. But so he helped me and introduced me to a few people, and eventually became my roommate. He and I eventually worked on some music in the late 2000s as well. But yeah, so right after I came back, that's when I had already been playing for Jeff. Probably once a month, once every 2 months, playing at Plastic. And he was like, yeah, wanted to see if you'd like to, start doing things more regularly, become a member of Volume. And that was that was right when he took over at Therapy. So
right.
That kind of opened doors for, all the crazy stuff that we used to do down there.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. Honestly, I mean, Tuesday nights at the Living Room for Volume was that was a great place for any young person trying to get into dance music and things like it, because it was just so raw in this way. I mean, the venue was dilapidated. I remember the toilets were there were no stalls. There were literally no stalls. I just totally remember
they were just toilets.
They were just I'm just like what if I have to sit down? And it's just nope. It was hilarious. But the music was so fucking on point. And that was the thing that really just got me even more so, because, early on I started, I did go to some club nights up in Revere. I went to the Bahama Beach Club. I remember going to that. But this was the real deal in terms of what underground dance music was for me.
The owner he was a nice guy, but talk about, just running a club is bare bones underground. I think he didn't go through distributors to buy liquor. I think he had a book in the back office that showed you how to make basically every type of liquor with a certain type of ingredients in a bottle of grain alcohol. Oh, so that's why the Jack Daniels doesn't taste like Jack Daniels. That's why everything just tastes a little bit
just slightly off, not right. But there was other forms of consumption in that place, and we won't go too much into that. But it was a very, very interesting time. It's just a lot of fun, man. I mean, it's just how it is, and just kind of coming out of all that, and you're here now. You're still based in New England. You're doing your thing. I mean, what do you got going on? I remember off camera we were talking about sort of a little bit about somebody hit you up for a couple remixes. How is that coming into play? Is that still a negotiation? Can you talk about it?
Oh, it's not really something that's up for negotiation. It's within the Bill Kramer and the Seed Recordings, they put out most of my originals right now, and the way their remixing goes, we've got a group. I think there's like 70 different artists in the Facebook group, and they're always looking for people within their own that they've already done releases with to do remixes, and specifically that got called out. They're like, we really want you to jump on board and get something done, and just unfortunately, due to weather conditions, my day job's just been a little out of control, and also with conditions with COVID and covering for people at work, people being out because of the virus-related conditions and things like that. It's just put a little bit of stress on my day-to-day operation. But I do have 3 original pieces of music that I'm trying to wrap up. I was hoping to get one done by today, but didn't happen. Sorry about that. But I do have plenty of original music to play. But yes, just trying to work on getting back to getting some things done for those guys. I know I'm working on something that we're gonna do the remix exchange with on Mysteryland as well.
Magic Land.
Sorry about this.
It's all good. That's a good name too, but yeah.
I just get, like the Beatles stuck in my head. Something like that. The Magic Mysteryland. I don't know. But yes, so I've been I've just had a couple things that I've been working on right now. Unfortunately, nothing to jump too far into as far as I can say too much about right now.
All right, cool, man. Hey, dude, that sounds really good. Thank you again, man, for coming up on the show. Really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we really look forward to hearing what you're gonna play, and for your set. And we'll once we're done here, we're gonna hop over into the studio space there, and we're gonna jam out.
Sounds good, man.